Hello everybody, I hope you're doing good today. This video will contain copyrighted material being used underneath the FECORE Act for educational purposes. It's FECORE Is Pseudoscience, Part 1. That's right, FECORE is pseudoscience, scientism. What they're doing is no different than what NASA is doing. I want to first start out with a warning to you all, whether you agree with me or not. Only a moron would go to an unsecure web page like FECORE.org and put in their personal information and credit card number. That's right. FECORE website is not secure at all. It's wide open. It's like leaving your doors unlocked for burglars. It's just waiting for a hacker to come in and steal its members' information. It seems FECORE is too cheap to pay the extra 10, 20, 30, whatever WordPress charges for the secure socket layering, SSL, to protect its customers. And I say customers because that's what you are. Your customers at a business selling you bullshit. They call it a .org. Alright, let's get started here. You know, when FECORE announced and came out of the closet, you know, they were proud of their upcoming Balaton Lake experiment. It's supposed to be the biggest thing in history, you know, but it's anything but that. You know, they did this promo for it, and they were gonna have a frozen lake with 4 teams of 6 guys out there measuring the laser beam to make sure it's level and all this shit. Well, anybody that knows anything about a light beam, because that's what a laser is a light beam, just like a flashlight has a light beam. They diverge. Divergence. That means they get bigger as they travel further. Lasers are susceptible to it also. So that means that FECORE's 41-mile distance, the manufacturer's estimated distance of that beam, circumference of that beam, will be over 17 feet. And with the atmosphere affecting it even more, it could be as much as 30 feet. Who knows? So by the time that beam reaches the shore 40 miles away, it will be useless. It will be so dim you would be lucky to see anything without zooming in on it with a P900. So let's listen to this. The most sophisticated long-distance laser experiment in history. Now you see the little lines up and down here. That's, you know, where the teams were supposed to be at to measure this beam that's getting ever and ever bigger to see if it's still level. How can you level something that's cone-shaped? All right, you have to find the center point, and there'd be light above that center point and light below. So how do you know where that center point is? Because you're only guessing what the circumference is based on the manufacturer's specs that were probably done indoors, not outdoors. So anyways, this was supposed to be the biggest experiment in history, and you know, it got reduced to a pile of shit because the lake didn't freeze. Yeah, man. They chose a lake that is in a climate that gets, you know, maybe 28, 29 degrees at night, and then 35 degrees in the daytime. So it goes from below freezing to above freezing. So whatever froze melts by the midday. So anyways, they chose a lake that rarely freezes, where they seem to want to face up to it or not. Alright, so there you go. It was supposed to be the biggest thing in history. But let's keep going here now, because FECORE came out with a video yesterday. Seems everybody's been asking a lot of questions. So they made this video to pretend like they've been hard at work. Ladies and gentlemen, they've passed this off as the first ever long-distance laser test at Lake Balaton. It's all a freaking lie. They've done this same test and failed with inconclusive results over 3 different times. It's the same thing with Jaren's laser test. They failed, inconclusive. You could argue either way. The earth is curved, or you could argue the Earth is flat based off the inconclusive results. And Sandor and Dr. Zach did these same experiments back in 2016. So all they're doing is repackaging them and selling them to you. That's it. They repackaged this whole laser test and selling it to you. This will be their third or fourth, maybe even fifth test at the lake using lasers. And the laser wasn't just recently custom built for FECORE. Zandor had this laser back in 2016. So the shit that Bob said that it was being custom made as we speak was a lie. Because I'll show you the laser being in part 1 or part 2. All right. So they did this video to quieten the criticism they were receiving. And most of this video, the footage they used in it was recorded when they did their previous experiments that failed at Lake Balaton. This footage you're looking at right here was recorded in 2016. And they're using it as footage that's taking place right now, and they're hard at work at this Lake Balaton experiment. It's bullshit. Let's watch this.
We will try to aim the laser across the lake at the lowest possible altitude to see if it will hit the other side of the lake 65 kilometers away. If it doesn't, then we will see if we can see the source of the beam from the lowest possible altitude.
Did you hear that? So, the beam, trust me, the beam ain't going to hit the source 40 miles away. It ain't going to hit the source 13 miles away. You ain't going to be able to see this beam and measure it. So this is going to be reduced, like they just said here, nothing more than a light test. Can you see the light that's the light source 40 miles away? Well, if you can, the Earth must be flat. There's no measurements there. Let's listen to him again, what he says here.
Altitude to see if it will hit the other side of the lake 65 kilometers away. If it doesn't, we will see if we can see the source of the beam from the lowest possible altitude.
Yep, that's all it is. Can you see so anybody could do this test. Anybody could beat FECORE to it. In fact, I challenge anybody out there, if you got a laser and a P900, go to the frozen lake, be it the big lakes in Chicago and all that, and do this test. Because that's all it's going to be from FECORE. So, let's keep going here. Again, Karen's asking the questions. This is supposed to be a question and answering session. I've never seen a question and answer session where the secretary of the organization is asking the questions to a moderator. I mean, if you're going to open up for question and answering, let's do this on Globebusters and stop blocking people when they point out the obvious bullshit that this laser experiment is. Okay? So let's listen to this segment here.
What are you going to do if the lake doesn't freeze this year?
We will try to do it from land to land without having to use a boat.
Again, like I said, all this footage in there is from old. This is no new testing they're doing like they said they've been doing, getting ready for the big day. This is all old footage. They haven't been at the lake testing, getting ready for the new experiment. It's a lie. This is all old footage. They didn't just do this to prove to you, you know, they're hard at work. They're not hard at work. Trust me.
Zach and Sander have already gone to the lake to investigate how we're...
Now, check this out. These are not high-tech, powerful lasers. These are handheld 2-3 watt lasers. Nothing special. You can buy them all over the internet. And they hold rechargeable 26650 batteries. Big deal. This is not a high-tech laser. I can guarantee it. But they claim again to went to the lake to do some pre-testing for the upcoming experiment. They've done pre-testing 2 or 3 days in a row for the upcoming test experiment. And I'll show you that later in part 2. But these are nothing special here. But they're pretending like they are. Now let's watch this segment here.
They're going to do it. And they said that doing it from land to land also works, since they have already seen the laser perfectly from 21 to 23 kilometers in pretest.
Oh, yep.
Did you hear him? Woohoo! Like this is some big fucking achievement. Anybody can do this with the laser. They seen the laser, the source of the light. Big deal. Do you guys see any beam? Well, there is a beam, but it's so faint you can't even see it. But the camera picks up on it. Watch closely.
That's right.
Look at it. That's the beam, man.
Yep.
Look at it.
Now they're using the blue laser to point at the green laser being pointed back. And then did you just see it flash on the camera sensor here and on the water? Now they're saying that they couldn't target these guys, but you could in a second here, but you could see they actually targeted them very well.
Look at it. That's the beam, man.
Boom, flashes on the camera sensor.
They could not measure the exact height of the beam because aiming the beam to where they were standing was not possible.
See, and he just tells you it's not possible. The camera sensor picked up on the faint, very dim beam. And even at 13 miles, they couldn't even see the beam. But they claimed they seen the divergence of the beam, and it was approximately, they said, 5.5 feet. I bet you it was much bigger than 5.5 feet. And you can't have accurate measuring when you only got approximates. Okay? So let's keep on going here, because there's more buffoonery. Mike had to make a special device to adjust the laser ever so finely. A special stand. Let's check this out.
What are the specifications of the mount? How was it made?
The custom-built mount contains 2 stepper motors, 1 power supply, 1 control interface with remote control, and is made out of aluminum for ease of transportation.
Over-engineered. They don't need all this shit. Over-engineered. They don't need all this shit. They just hit the guy's camera lens at 13 miles without this, and then they got stepper motors on it, and it'll have remote control so the people looking at the beam can adjust it from 13 miles away or 40 miles away or whatever. It's just sinking needless money into bullshit. That's all they're doing. Buying a lot of toys. And then they act like Mike built this sophisticated stand. There's nothing sophisticated about it. Let's take a look.
This is the first image of the mount before all options were installed.
Who designed and built the mount?
The mount was designed and built by Mike Cavanaugh. The idea is simple, but designing it and making it happen is quite difficult.
There's nothing difficult about building this. It's a threaded rod. And it's going to have a stepper motor on it. Big deal. If anybody doesn't know what a stepper motor is, it's a motor that goes in small increments, step by step by step. A fraction of an inch by a fraction of an inch. It's called a stepper motor. And you can control it remotely. So it's just sinking in whatever, $3,000, $4,000, whatever it costs for it, needlessly. So let's keep going here. But yeah, they're trying to show off Mike like he's some special designer or engineer or some bullshit. And I'll point out later that this laser beam, if you got a 17-foot divergence, they're going to have this laser beam up at 8.5 feet. I'll point that out to you later, though, probably in part 2. But you can see the fuckery here. There's nothing special about this design. Let's keep going here. Let's see. This one here is all about the world record. They seem to think taking a 17-foot beam or even bigger that you could barely see and targeting a big white whatever they're going to put up there, a white board, you know, I don't know, think of a movie theater screen or something, and this big beam is supposed to target it, and it's supposed to be some big event, some world record. It's fucking buffoonery. Let's check this out.
Did this break the world record?
If everything goes as we expect, this experiment will actually set the world record for the longest distance laser targeting in history. and be verified by a third party, unlike the moon.
They don't say who this third party is, and this is just fuckery, ladies and gentlemen. Big deal. They hit a target with a laser, a 17-foot beam. That's not a very big accomplishment. So anyways, you can start to see the fuckery here. But like I said, they failed in several other attempts to prove the Earth is flat at the Lake Balaton with lasers. This is nothing new like Bob and Jaron and all them have been selling it to you. They failed several times already. Yeah, that's all there, you know. World record. Wow. Let's check this part out here. Because you'll see it's nothing more than a light test. When I mean light test, it means I'm going to set a light 2 feet off the level of the water, 2 feet high off the water, and I'm going to go 40 miles away and see if I could see that light. And if I could see that light, then that means the Earth is flat. So let's listen to their bullshit, because this tells you this isn't a sophisticated experiment. In fact, this is pseudoscience. Scientism, at best.
How can you see the laser beam from the other side of the lake if the Earth is curved?
If the Earth is curved, then we will not see it at all. Bear in mind that the curvature at such long distances should be very noticeable. Let us give you an example so you can understand this. If the laser's elevation is 20 feet or 6 meters, and the distance to the target is 40 miles or 64 kilometers, then
how many times we've all seen this? We've seen this on Jaron's channel several times. Everybody's explaining this bullshit. And they're just going right back to the same old experiment that a lot of YouTube channels have done already. Let's keep going.
Even if the laser is tangent to the water surface, it will still be 794 feet or 239 meters above our heads, and it may be impossible for us to reach it.
What happens if you see it?
Then we will take all the measurements necessary to see why it didn't confirm.
Measurements. How can you take measurements of a beam that's getting bigger and bigger as it gets further and further away from the source? Let me explain divergence to you, ladies and gentlemen. It's no different than if you take a flashlight and turn on, press it up against the wall, and then start slowly backing up that flashlight. You'll see the beam get bigger and bigger. And pretty soon you'll get 5-6 feet away, and it'll just illuminate the whole wall. Well, that's all they're doing right here. A laser is nothing really special. It's a light-emitting diode in the family of LEDs. And like all other lights, it's susceptible to divergence. And like I say, when you put the camera, the flashlight up against the wall and you back it up, and the beam gets bigger. That's your divergence. Okay? So there's no way they can actually find the center of that beam with exact precision and come up with exact measurements. In fact, their measurements are such a freaking joke that it's going to prove that none of this is scientific, because here I'm going to show you video from their first attempt at their Lake Balaton laser experiment. Now notice here, it says you can see the laser beam always had the same diameter on the board, but they never measured it. They're saying that they had the same diameter on the board as they got further and further away. You didn't measure it. You didn't take the scientific steps to prove it. You're just throwing out your opinion that it didn't get bigger. Why? I mean, if this was a scientific experiment, they would first test the divergence of the laser and document it, because it needs to be part of this experiment. Now here you have Dave Murphy on this board, and then watch this video and how they're measuring this beam here. You see it right here. Watch.
Laser beam always had the same diameter on the board, an indication that our laser beam divergence was very minimal. The new collimator lenses made just for these long-range experiments was performing very well. The laser beam was perfectly collimated with a minimal divergence at long distances.
Now, How accurate is that? I'm sorry, but there's got to be at least a maximum of 4 inches error, give or take, plus or minus. That's not an accurate scientific measurement. Hold the measure tape on the water. I mean, I could have thought of a better idea. I would have went to the hardware store and got a yardstick and then stuck the yardstick on the board and just had it sitting right on top of the water. Would have been a whole lot more accurate. And then, like I say, you got to guess at the center of this beam, because that's your level point. Your level point ain't up here on the outer circumference of it. And that's what I'm saying. You can never level a laser beam because it's forever getting bigger. Just nonsense. It's pseudoscience. Now listen to what Dr. Zach said here about their measurement techniques.
The water was very calm, so our measurements were accurate to a very high precision.
There you go, folks. Have a good day. Enjoy part 2 tomorrow. We'll see you then.